Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to your horoscope for the week of November 3rd, 2024. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. It is a remarkable astrological week, without a doubt. Big moves happening in the sky now. Boy, is this a very special time. And it truly is so special now. Powerful energies are with us, and we're already feeling them right out of the gate. And that is because of the Mars Pluto opposition that I spoke about last week as well. And I want to further that discussion. It is going to be this energy that peaks on Sunday as we begin this week. And it is the ancient ruling planet of Scorpio opposite the modern ruling planet of Scorpio. Now, each time these planets stand across each other in the sky, which happens about once every 2 years, it can evoke different areas of the sky. But what is fascinating about this time, this is where Pluto really is in its very last moments, moving through the sign of Capricorn. It's going to be on the 19th of November, just days after the full moon in the middle of the month, that Pluto will change signs. Once we have this opposition that takes place on the Cancer-Capricorn axis for the next 20 years, this opposition, which takes place again every 2 years, is going to happen in completely different signs. The opposition for the next 20 years will take place with Mars in Leo and Pluto in Aquarius. But this time, we're not going to have to wait that long. And that is because Mars is in shadow right now, which means we are in the larger Mars retrograde season that's going to take us all the way into May of 2025. Now, I'll be here to talk about it every step of the way. I spoke about it in the year ahead horoscopes, and also there will be a Mars retrograde special horoscope, so be on the lookout for that. You can find some links below and on my YouTube page as well. But having said that, it is literally the opposition that happens at 29 degrees, these concentrated moments of energy. And then the following day, Mars changes signs, moving into the sign of Leo. And the next two oppositions that take place between Mars and Pluto in the coming months is going to be with both of these planets in different signs. What is fascinating, though, about this moment is that it isn't just about the signs. It is that it is an anaretic degree. It is that this is concentrated energy. It's not just Mars in Cancer. This is a jacked up Cancerian vibe. It's not just that Pluto is in Capricorn. It is a full on jacked up Capricornian vibe. But there's another layer of consideration that I'm going to bring your attention to here. Months ago, Alejo Lopez, the one and only brilliant astrologer, taught a class at Synchronicity University on midpoints and so much more. And this is considered a more advanced technique, but it's very powerful when it comes to prediction itself. And in the context of prediction, we have a powerful midpoint being highlighted here. And that is the midpoint of Mercury and Neptune. Now, what is a midpoint? It is just as it sounds. You take two planets and you look at what's happening right in the middle in the zodiac between those two planets, and you look at when there are big planets moving over that midpoint, because it in some way is going to activate these two vibrations. It's going to connect those two vibrations, and it's going to bring them that much more into our attention. Well, here's what we have. We have the midpoint of Mercury and Neptune. Mercury has to do with information, with media, with the facts, with what we're talking about. And Neptune has to do with illusion and glamour and not knowing what's real and what isn't real. And what's happening under the light of this opposition? Well, Pluto is right on top of that midpoint of Mercury and Neptune. This is huge. This, to me, I think, is one of the more powerful understandings of just what might be taking place in the beginning days of this week. There is likely going to be a lot of information coming forward, but it's like we don't really know what's real, and the thing that looks the most real really might not be the case. There are illusions being weaved, and some of us are going to see right through those illusions. We're going to be able to have that understanding. Okay, this is fake. This is not certain. This is glamour. This is movie magic. It's going to be some of the information that's going to be presented as fact. And yet At the same time, there is this profound truth playing out in the midst of it. It is really about stirring very strong emotion, very deep fear that is going to be part of the energy in the first days of this week. Now, this is why astrologers have been saying for months and months. I mean, I know I was saying it back at the beginning of the year, if not even earlier. This Pluto leaving Capricorn is not going out quietly. It is Pluto that's going to, sort of make a statement like, I was here, I was in the sign of Capricorn, and don't you forget it. However, it's really important to be patient and take any information, anything that seems like a sure call, pace it, right? Be measured with whatever information comes forward now, knowing that more has to be revealed. Emotion is going to be stirring very high in the first days of this week as well, where a lot of people are truly going to believe certain things that are not rooted in reality or fact, and might even be rooted in forces of manipulation. And so in order to calm those voices, what we do is we decide not to participate in them. We decide that we are going to take it one moment at a time and see how it goes. I want you to consider this as well. It is going to be later this month, actually next week, when we have a full moon. And that full moon is going to be speaking in supreme harmony with Pluto. And that is going to be a full moon that has to do with quick moving events. It's a surprise a minute kind of energy playing out. But the fact that that full moon happens just 4 days before Pluto changes signs, I'm actually really encouraged by this, because it tells me that the last really important alignment that Pluto is going to make is going to be with a full moon that brings with it freedom and lightness. There is a sense of elation and promise at that time that I think is going to be really encouraging. And what that tells me is that whereas if Pluto were to only have this opposition and then leave Capricorn, well, we're carrying forward that energy of chaos and intense feelings. But that's not likely to be the case. Chances are there is going to be a moment that feels grounding, that feels a lot more clear. I spoke about that full moon at length for each and every sign in the monthly horoscopes up on my YouTube channel. So you may want to check that out again. But, I was talking about how on the same day as that full moon, literal hours before the full moon perfects, Saturn goes direct. And that is about clarity. That is about honesty. That is about the truth. And that full moon is going to be hand in hand with Uranus, which is also about the truth, but it's a cleansing truth at that. And again, that trine to Pluto says that it is a deeply transformative moment. And so there's so much to look forward to. Whatever things might look like in this moment, remember, so much emotion is caught up in it. And I do think that there are going to be forces that are inclined towards manipulation. So, I like to say, pace yourself and be yourself. That's going to be especially important this week. And at the beginning of the week, with Scorpion vibes so strong, right? I mentioned Mars is the ancient ruling planet of Scorpio. Pluto is the modern ruling planet of Scorpio. And whenever these planets stand across from each other, it's a chance for us as a collective to ask ourselves, how are we as a collective going to honor the energy of this sign, this archetypal energy, which is a part of us all? Just like every sign is a part of us all, every sign represents some part of human expression and human experience. And the Scorpio vibration encourages us to be honest and to decide that we are going to be a force of transformation in the world. And each of us is going to go about it in our own unique ways. Each of us is going to find that thing that we're passionate about and to tap into it in a way that brings us not only connection with passion, but helps us to feel like we're aligning with something that feels more peaceful in the face of chaos. That is the gift of Scorpion energy. And whatever that is, it's not going to be the same for every single person out there. We all are called to different causes, to different passions, to different things that speak to us deeply. Well, we're called to that for a reason. And those reasons are based on partly our own life experience and what that's shown us, but it's also based on the fact that the universe and the world is so multifaceted. And Everybody needs to care about something, and everything needs someone to care about it. And so instead of judging others to say, wow, you care about that, that shouldn't matter nearly as much as this should matter, isn't it wonderful that more of us than ever before can really state clearly what it is that they care about and to move towards that sense of healthy transformation in a way that calls us as part of our own unique journeys. And along the way, find people who resonate with that. I saw this really funny meme that I saved and I actually shared with my Aunt Shireen. And I know a lot of people don't feel this way, and I have absolute respect for that. Everybody, as part of their own unique journey, is going to be called to do different things. But this meme says that people who don't have kids act like having kids is the worst thing in the world, essentially, right? And those people who want children and don't have them, of course, that isn't true for them. But for those of us who don't want them, yeah, that can sometimes feel true for us, kind of as a joke, kind of lightheartedness, right? But I am of the belief that the reason that we want children, well, one of the many reasons that we might want children, one of the many reasons we might want pets, right? This is the case for me, is because we have a very innate need in us as human beings to give love. And it is in the giving of love that we are changed, that we feel ourselves bringing forward qualities that help us to feel good about ourselves, that help us to respect ourselves. It is in the quality of giving love wherever it is that we are called to, that we just might find ourselves feeling more like ourselves in a way that I think a lot of us really love. Now, where that love is directed, how that love is directed, whether towards your pets, whether towards your children, whether towards members of a segment of the culture or society that you live in, there are so many places that could use your love. And love being love means that love is never wasted. And love being love means that it's not for anybody else to judge. But your need to give love means that when you are giving it, it brings with it a measure of peace, no matter what else might be happening in your life. And with that peace, love feels magnified all over the world because we contribute to that larger energy of love and the wisdom it helps cultivate, which I do think is the core light within each and every living being, including us as well. Now, speaking of love, let's look at the journey of Venus this week, making fascinating alignments while moving through the sign of Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is a sign that has to do with worldly matters, causes, endeavors. It has to do with understanding yourself in relation to the world. It's where you meet the world and the galaxy even as well. And it is about understanding ourselves as citizens of something larger. That is what Sagittarius represents. It has to do with our own beliefs, yes, but it also has to do with the institutions that are rooted in what we believe. So legal institutions, which are, constantly evolving based on what a particular society might deem as important, or the norms or the ways in which they might be growing or evolving or regressing in a given time. The political institutions, higher education institutions, we find the energy of Sagittarius to be sort of the patron of these particular realms, and its ruling planet, Jupiter, as well. So Venus is here, encouraging us to bring love to these particular areas of life for all of us. But Venus has an interesting journey this week. At the beginning of the week, it is Venus that will stand across the sky from Jupiter, but then will end the week squaring Neptune. And consider that on Thursday, Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius itself is going to enter shadow. So this is the beginning of the larger Mercury retrograde season. And this entire retrograde season is going to be spent with Mercury moving through the sign of Sagittarius. I even spoke about that Mercury retrograde season for each and every sign in the monthly horoscopes as well. You'll notice that when you review that again here on my YouTube channel. But having said that, I do think that Venusian energy is saying to us, is my love in vain or not? Is my love being wasted or not? Is my love making me overly optimistic or not? And that love is really hopeful and optimistic when Venus moves through the sign of Sagittarius. And remember, what love is, what an expression of love is going to be highly personal, unique to each of us. But it is love itself, whether we call it universal love, whether it's love for each other, love for humanity, love for the journey, romantic love. It all might feel like it's on a bit of a roller coaster at a time like this. Now, at the beginning of next week, Venus is going to change signs, moving into the sign of Capricorn. And that's a more stable vibration. It's a vibration that has to do with really understanding what's being built and being patient with love and being consistent with love, wherever that love might find you, and however you might choose to bring forward the energy of love. But for now, in a mutable sign, it might feel like there's a little bit of a roller coaster here. Unfortunately, there's that sense of going way overboard at the start of the week. And then that sense of being kind of uncertain, maybe a little disappointed as we get to the end of the week before it is that we understand what it is to move towards something that feels more solid and more sure. Trust the journey of love. Trust the journey of your heart now. Whatever answers you find, remember, with Mercury moving into shadow in the energy of Sagittarius, there's going to be a lot of focus as a collective, a lot of us talking about what's happening with politics and with belief and what people believe about the world, about each other. This is going to be something that all of us around the world in one way or another are going to be talking about, including international relations. And just when we think we know what's happening, it might feel a little bit like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But it's part of a journey of really understanding what is true for us and what really matters to us as well. Going to Venus, though, Venus has to do with money as well. So be mindful of that. There's this sense of going over the top for some of us out there at the very beginning of the week. And then having to more honestly evaluate as we get to the end of the week, or maybe have to face where it is that we might have gotten carried away at the start of the week. Now, that could be related to money, but it could be related to our own desires, our own emotions, our own expectations of other people. Where love is given from a place of innocence and understanding, then it isn't that you're giving love and the other person can do what they want with it and they might not do good things with it, but rather you're giving from a place of still having more than enough for yourself and remembering that that's the love that's strongest. That's the love that matters. But when it is that we are giving with certain expectations, or there's fear or something in our intuition we're not listening to that's saying, hey, you're giving a whole lot of love here, you're giving a whole lot of money here, you're giving a whole lot of your very precious resources of life here. Maybe you want to save some for you, but you're not really listening. Well, then that's not really rooted in love anymore. That's rooted in fear of loss or a sense of maybe there not being enough, so that you have to give in order to get. What is for you will always, always find its way to you, and it will always, always find its way to you in perfect time. That is part of the Sagittarian vibe. Capricornian vibe says, you got to earn it. Yeah, you can get it, but earn it. Put in the work, put in the time, right? But we're going to get there next week. This week, no. This week, it is about staying in that energy of positivity, of remaining hopeful, while also making sure that we allow that hope to soothe ourselves. And we remember that we are connected to a larger universal love. That is the source, not a particular person, not a particular purchase, not a particular advancement. It is us that is well provided for by a generous universe, a generous galaxy, if we will only orient ourselves towards that, but also strive to stay honest with ourselves, that for so many of us, what really matters, what we really need, we actually really have already. And what it is that we might want, if it is for us, it will come together in perfect time. We might feel that we can glimpse it, we can see it, especially at the start of the week. And then it might feel like it's far or it just slipped through our fingers at the end of the week, but it doesn't need to feel that way. Instead, it is by staying measured and staying connected to source within that, oh my goodness, we are filled with that sense of all that is possible. We're not going out there and doing something before it is that we feel secure about it, but rather we are in the space of allowing. And from there is nothing but peace available to us, but also real excitement, but all the wonderful and rewarding experiences we have yet to have in this larger world. On Monday, the sun will speak in supreme harmony with Saturn. And this is a key characteristic of last week's new moon. And so I see this as that new moon energy being carried into this week, bringing with it a sense of maturity, a sense of stability, an understanding of what it is that feels that it has begun and what it is that we want to build, where it is that we're going to be encouraged not only to be practical, but also to put in the time and to understand that sometimes sacrifices can pay off, but they have to be honest and they have to be smart sacrifices. So this is where we might just be refining our course forward. There's a lovely little book by Seth Godin. He's one of my favorite business writers. I actually talk about him in the business class I teach once a year at Kepler College every summer. And during that class, I talk about some of his ideas. It's like spiritual entrepreneurship is what I teach. It's called YouTube for Astrologers, but really it's spiritual entrepreneurship. Now, having said that, Seth Godin, he's written lots of little business books, and one of his books is called The Dip. And it's essentially this idea of when is it a good idea to kind of cut your losses and quit? And when is it that it's not the time to quit, but rather it's the time to persevere or to give more? What I love about the recent Scorpio new moon and this sun trine Saturn is that we are going to gain insights into what this is for us and where this energy might be playing out in our lives as well. Is it that we're making sacrifices intelligently and that we can press on in certain ways? Where is it that we may need to adjust course? And that might involve some sacrifice here or there. Or where is it that we've just been going along a path and now we're getting honest about why, when it really is the case that maybe that's not the path we're supposed to be on? This can be that sense of honesty that brings with it calm. That's when you know you're on the right path. And if it's a path that you're meant to stay the course on, you're meant to continue forward with, then it will be one of incremental movements forward. But where it is that we might be thinking we only have to do this much in order to get this much, where it is that we're hoping for wild gains, Saturn isn't a fan of wild gains because Saturn says it's not about the end. It's about who you become in the process. It's about the journey. It's about what you learn about yourself along the way. But Saturn also says you can have anything if you're willing to work for it. You can have anything if you're willing to put in the time and put in the sacrifice. But at the same time, Saturn isn't the only thing to exist in the sky, right? We've also got Jupiter. And Jupiter is a different vibration. It's hopeful. It says anything is possible, right? Believe it, be it, achieve it. It's all available to you, yes. But Jupiter is also the ancient ruling planet of Pisces, which is about trust in the universe. And Jupiter says maybe there's a higher, more loving vision than anything you've imagined for yourself. If you will only allow yourself to receive it, to hear it, to feel it. Both are necessary as part of our journey towards doing more of whatever it is that we feel called to do. Now, this isn't just energy that works out professionally, right? It works out personally. It works out in terms of the people we have in our lives, the projects we give our energy to, the things that feel fulfilling to us or don't feel fulfilling to us. We'll be able to find the right answer for us at this time as part of deciding the next best steps for us. We are refining course here, and where it is that it is energy that says stay the course, well, we'll be understanding how to get to the end we want with greater precision. But where that isn't the case, where it is that our truth is, you know what, I'm just not in this anymore. I'm not invested in it. It doesn't feel like the path I'm supposed to be on. That's okay as well, because that truth puts you in a place of power. Because even if you don't know what it is that is supposed to be part of the path, or what it is that's going to get you to some end that you might have in mind, acknowledging what isn't feeling like part of the path is a huge leap towards what is, even if you don't know what that looks like just yet. It's not lost on me that on Monday, Mars will change signs. Now, I touched on this just a little bit at the beginning of this video, so let me talk about this now. Mars moving into the sign of Leo is huge, right? This is where in a month's time we're going to have Mars going retrograde. And the next two Mars-Pluto oppositions taking place at the beginning of January 2025 and towards the end of April 2025, well, they will be with Mars in this sign. And Leo is an energy of pride, but it's also an energy of knowing that there's something within you that is worthy of shining and being seen. It's the energy of heart and living life from a place of heart. It's deciding what it is that you're going to be proud of about yourself or about your life. And with Mars, to bring that much more focus and passion to those very things. It's about doing the work that self-love sometimes asks. But this is the kind of self-love that has to do with worthiness to shine, worthiness to be seen. And where it is that some of us might have issues to heal in that, well, this is where we're going to claim that power, that fire within our hearts, that much more. And we're going to be encouraged to do so as well, especially in the context of our connection to other people, especially once it is that those oppositions start to perfect between Mars and Pluto. Leo is also an energy that says, what the heart wants, and it is what it is. But with Mars, it's that very desire that can feel like it is on steroids. And what I mean by that is really concentrated. It's got a lot of adrenaline to it. But also, with Leo vibration, we are looking at healthy ego, but also being encouraged to identify unhealthy forms of ego. How does that show up? What do we do about it? It is about having that depth of appreciation that our hearts beat for different things, and that really is okay. And they beat in certain directions towards certain people, causes, things, spaces, and places, and that's okay as well. Wherever it is that you feel you shine brightest, wherever it is that you feel like your strongest self, well, those are spaces and places and people and relationships that you're going to be that much more inclined to pour more of yourself towards now. Collectively, this is going to be a really interesting energy, especially with the ongoing dance with Pluto, because Leo is also the energy of celebrity. Pluto moving back into Aquarius is like the anti-celebrity vibration. I want you to think back to what took place way back. 2020 is what we're looking at. Way back, we're looking at March of 2020. Well, what happened back then? We had Saturn and Mars meeting at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And I remember way back then saying to you guys, watch what takes place in your own life, but also in the collective, because whatever happens, it's going to be that beginning of foresight into what we can expect Pluto and Aquarius to be, what we're going to spend 20 years really understanding and bringing forward that much more. And there were several big things that took place back then. So one, of course, was, it felt like the world shut down, right? We did have this idea of social restriction, something and a term that I think a lot of us had never heard before. I never heard it before personally, and I'm a pretty worldly person, I'd like to think. But yeah, that was a phrase that was going around, but there's different ways to understand that, of course, what social restriction is. Sometimes it's just, I would like to think, if you're in certain spaces, how are you going to be a part of those spaces or not? What are you going to bring forward, and what are you going to restrict? What are you going to hold back? Could be another way that this energy comes forward. But we saw a couple of important things happening at this time. One was oil became worthless very quickly, right? And that's going to be really fascinating because, again, I remember saying to you at that time, this is a shift in understanding who has the power in the world. And we're going to start moving towards an economy of technology, of ideas, of creativity, where anyone can be a star, anybody could be a celebrity, but it could come and go quickly as well. Well, what is it that we saw at that time also? Well, we saw this whole thing about, not liking celebrities, and there was some celebrity bashing happening. But this is when TikTok really took off, right? This is when your average person doing a little dance or being silly in some way could be seen by millions of people just overnight and then not, right? To have one viral video and everybody's talking about you for like a day and then not. And the other thing we saw was, and I remember this so clearly, sourdough bread, right? The most popular videos became people baking sourdough bread. And what is that? That's like the most normal, mundane human activity. And that's what we were celebrating. That's how we were connecting to each other. I don't think the world is going to shut down. I'm not saying that at all, right? But what I am saying is we're going to have this really interesting contrast playing out in the next few months. And it starts now, where on the one hand, everybody is a star, everybody is special. But then if everyone's special, then no one is special. And there's this sense of wanting to celebrate and uplift the celebrities and celebrity power. But then there's also going to be this growing energy that says, you're not better than me. It doesn't matter if more people know you than they know me, right? We're the same. Yeah, you might be special, but so am I. So then neither of us is special. I think we're going to see a lot more cultural statements like that around the world. As much as it is that anybody can be a star, which is part of Mars in Leo, there's also going to be this powerful thread that says, yeah, anybody can be, but everyone is. Everyone's a star to somebody, and that's okay as well. You might want certain things. You might want to shine, and go ahead, shine, do your thing. But at the same time, remember the collective, remember what we're contributing to everybody. So it's going to be a really interesting contrast that we're exploring in the months ahead. But that exploration is going to start now. Where on the one hand, I think right away we're going to notice this idea and this conversation around the power, which is Mars, of celebrity, and how much power we're going to give just based on celebrity, and where it is that the collective is going to lead the way, where it is going to be that there's a larger will of the people. And that comes down to so many things, right? Of course, yes, we can think about it in the political context because right now the US is having this very notable election, a presidential election taking place, but in our own lives, individually as well, in our own sphere of influence, where is it that we are well known? And are we known for the things that we like about ourselves or not? How much do we feel we should give and think of others? And how do we balance that with what our own needs might be? Whether it's our need for validation or affirmation or just staying in touch with the things that help us to feel good about ourselves, that help us to feel that we're special in some way. It's going to be a powerful journey. We're at the very beginning of a very important journey of understanding the individual in contrast with the collective, and where it is those needs merge together, but where it is that they really don't as well. And how are we going to find balance in the midst of it as part of us really entering into, more fully stepping into, putting both feet into the age of Aquarius. Now, this is something I spoke of at length in the When Does the Age of Aquarius Begin video that I posted a few years back. I'll try to remember to link to that somewhere here. But in that video, I talked about how we've been transitioning between the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius, and why that's happening sort of celestially, right? What does it mean when we talk about the precession of the equinoxes, but also what some really big deal thinkers thought about this, especially astrologically. And in that video, I look at the ideas of the late, great Jonathan Caner, a remarkable, celebrated British astrologer who passed away a few years back. And Carl Jung as well wrote extensively about this shift in his essay called Eon. And I quote from that as well. And I talk about the discovery of Uranus and so much more. But all of that explanation brings us here to say, once Pluto moves into Aquarius later this month, it's like both feet in. We are fully planting ourselves into the age of Aquarius, which is a brand new chapter for humanity. I know I've been saying this, that the world we started this decade with is going to be a very different world at the end of the decade. Next year, we're going to start feeling big things shifting, but 2026, 2027 is when this acceleration into the age of Aquarius, well, that's when it's really going to make itself known as a stronger world force that we've been slowly transitioning into since the discovery of Uranus, going all the way back to the later part of the 1700s and the Industrial Revolution. We're going to plant ourselves in it much more. This moment right now that we find ourselves in is part of that very valuable transition. This Pluto Cancer opposition, these are what would call feminine signs, okay? So I'm always kind of reluctant to use that language because I'm talking about it archetypally, right? There's the archetype of, for lack of a better way of putting it, feminine, which is an energy that's been conceptualized as receptive, intuitive, and then there is energy that's conceptualized as masculine, that is thought of as energy that is driven, action-focused. Now, of course, I'm thinking about the work of Carl Jung, where he talked about the animus and the anima, which is basically this idea that if you're just looking at people in terms of their gender identity, well, all of us are both masculine and feminine is what he talks about when he explores that theory. And I believe that very much. And we are so fortunate. More of us than ever before are able to honor those parts of us that might have traditionally been only relegated to the realm of what we thought was masculine. And more women can honor that parts of themselves. And also more men as well can honor those parts of themselves that were traditionally thought of as just feminine, thereby becoming more whole human beings, all of us in part of that journey, which I think is such a great blessing for so many of us, more than ever before. Having said that, yeah, we are going to have Mars opposite Pluto at the start of the week. And they're both in these signs that have to do with what is meant to be, what is happening, allowing whether or not you want it, having to accept. These signs are also highly traditional. And the sign of Aquarius in particular, but Leo as well in its own way, are like anything but traditional. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how we as a collective start to grapple with this understanding that what brought us structure, what we thought was so sure from the ground on which we stand, the foundations of our life, which is what Mars represents, to the larger structures we could count on and who has the power, who doesn't, which is about Capricorn. Well, in many ways, they're kind of at odds and neither is feeling very secure now. But we need those moments of insecurity in order to get to the new and in order to even allow ourselves to envision what more could be possible for us individually and collectively as well. What I love about this week for us, there's so much here. It is a powerful and meaningful astrological moment. Whew, there's a lot going on here, right? I'm going to say, look, the Mars-Pluto opposition is a really big deal. I know astrologers have been talking about this for a really long time. It's one of the defining characteristics of 2024 for so many of us out there. And it's one of the last really important alignments that Pluto is going to make before it changes signs on the 19th of November. Now, thankfully, it isn't the last, which would mean that we're sort of carrying that energy into the other sign, but rather It's going to be next week as Pluto speaks in supreme harmony with a full moon. That's going to be the last really important alignment that we have Pluto making. And that suggests to me that, yes, right now there might be tension. There might be frustration. There might be a sense of us looking to the past, which is Cancerian energy, but also feeling like there are certain things that we thought we could count on in the future, and now we're just not so sure. But all of it is really encouraging us to reimagine the possible, to stay open to possibilities, and to connect on a root level very deeply to knowing that what is for us is going to be for us, that we can have faith, that we can trust, that we can surrender our worries or our uncertainties or what it is that we're so sure we desire without even really knowing what it is just yet. And instead to trust that there just might be a larger, higher, more loving vision for our lives. Well, when we can get to that place of allowing some new vision to emerge, well, we're able to break free of the fear of what is unknown, clinging to what we know with Cancer, Capricorn. Instead, we're moving forward towards the new and the next. That is a part of the great excitement of this time. And remember, when we welcome in the new, when we welcome in the next, well, that's when we're also welcoming in the potential for things to be that much better, that much greater, and that much more honoring of whom it is that we are next going to be. Well, thank you so much for watching. What do you love about this week? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading you guys. And to prove it to you, here are some of my most recent favorite comments. Thank you to everybody who likes, who comments, who subscribes, who shares, who thumbs up. All of it means so much. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you. And of course, if you want to know how all this wonderful stuff this week speaks to you in your sign, log on to NadiyaShahSuperstars.com, where you get expanded, exclusive video scopes each and every week for each and every sign for as low as just $3 a month. With choose your membership rate. Higher tiers get you things like all access passes to Synchronicity University events, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the Superstar space at NadiyaShahSuperstars.com. Links are in the description below. Synchronicity University has some absolutely incredible programs starting this week, this month. It is going to be an amazing session and a season over at Synchronicity University. Now, Choose Your Tuition Rate officially ended late last week, but if you're watching this early in the week enough, you may be able to still tap into the power of Choose Your Tuition Rate as low as just $5 a class by heading on over to synchronicityuniversity.com. Because the person who's responsible for shifting that or taking that down isn't working until late Monday. Yeah, if you're watching this before then, you still might be able to be one of those last minute signups so that you don't miss the incredible opportunity to learn from these incredible astrologers only at Synchronicity University. After Monday, the price will go to its regular price of $35 a class, and you're always welcome to sign up for individual classes as well. So I'm going to start with my own class that's starting this week, and it is Life Cycles. This is going to be huge. We're going to look at things like the Saturn return in one class, the Jupiter return in another, the Chiron return. We're going to look at the Uranus return, and then aspects of Neptune and Pluto as well. It isn't just the return we're focusing on, but also the aspects along the way that help us to really bring together to manifest that shift that happens at the return. And so we're not just looking at, for example, the Saturn return. We're looking at the Saturn opposition that happens 14 years before the return. We're looking at the Saturn square, which happens 7 years after and then 7 years before the Saturn return as well, and so much more. We're doing this for each of these planets. So there's so much to look forward to here. These are the moments that shift our life, that bring certain cycles to an end, but also help us to start anew. Every life is filled with this sense of ebb and flow, filled with the sense of what has served its purpose, what we're now moving towards, whom it is we know ourselves to be, becoming something more than we were before. This is all going to be part of the focus and the journey that we're taking at this time. So stay open to possibility, of course, but also know that with astrology, it is a powerful language from which self-knowledge can be clarified, can be gleaned. And that's what all the classes at Synchronicity University are meant to be a part of as part of your unique journey. But especially when we look at big things like life cycles, well, that's when it really hits home. This understanding of when our life went through some big changes, new chapters began when we had some big life cycle transit. So we'll be exploring all of that and so much more in my class starting this week, only at synchronicityuniversity.com. Links are in the description below. Synchronicity University presents the one and only Tiffany Harlick, the beautiful, mystic, psychic energy, and she's going to help you to magnify and to tap into and bring forward your own intuitive, psychic, mystical gifts and so much more with her class only at Synchronicity University. Tiffany recently had a conversation with me here on my YouTube channel, so you saw just how extraordinary she is, how much she has to bring and to teach. And it is Tiffany that's going to help you to tap into your own understanding of what your psychic gifts just might be and how you can strengthen them that much more now and going forward from here. Now, Tiffany's class actually starts next week. It's not starting this week. So it's the perfect time to still tap into the power of that choose your tuition rate at the very beginning of the week. But after that, that's okay as well. You can join Tiffany, but just know that the journey you're going to take with her, well, next week it kicks into high gear as part of a 5-week journey with her, magnifying your mystical gifts and so much more only at synchronicityuniversity.com. Links are in the description below. Synchronicity University presents the one and only JANÉT Jones. JANÉT is coming with advanced techniques, Duads and Decans and so much more. Her class starts this week as well. And JANÉT is such a powerhouse. She is the force behind Spiritual Gangster Certified, which across platforms has some 300,000 people following it. And she brings so much wisdom and advice and memes and healing through that platform. And she's a brilliant astrologer now coming to Synchronicity University. So yes, this is advanced techniques for those of you who want to take your practice to the next level by understanding the nuances presented through Duads, through Decans, and so much more. Only at synchronicityuniversity.com. Links are in the description below. Synchronicity University presents an absolutely incredible November 2024 speaker series. This is where we're bringing out the mystical, witchy vibes of Scorpio season. And each one of these classes has a haunting, mystical vibe. We're looking at mystical nights here with the November speaker series. And we just had earlier this weekend, Mark McGowan, How to Be a Medium was his class, and that's now available for instant download at synchronicityuniversity.com. Next week features Natalia Maria, and Natalia is going to help us to understand Pluto transits by looking at some key myths of Odin, not normally mythologies that you associate with Pluto, and yet she's going to help us to understand bringing in these whole other mythologies as part of preparing for our own Plutonian experiences ahead. We will then have my dear friend Michael Barwick, the one and only Michael Barwick. He is going to be teaching about gemstones and magic and astrological magic as well. And I know that he is well prepared for it. He understands the power of gemstones and how they can amp up your intentions and manifesting them. And so he's going to be teaching you about that. Bear River at Synchronicity University will be next up, and he's also teaching on astrological magic, but this is about tapping into the power of the ancestors, practicing ancestral magic with your astrological magic skills. And Ursula Stockter helps us to understand the magic and symbolism of the tarot, especially in the context of Renaissance symbolism. And she's the perfect person to teach it as a Jungian analyst and as a tarot expert. She's taught full-on tarot classes at Synchronicity University before, so she's going to help you to tap into the power of your tarot deck at this time. You can see it's an incredible season at Synchronicity University. If you're watching early enough in the week, yes, you can still choose your tuition rate. After that, it's just $35 a class only at synchronicityuniversity.com. An amazing November up ahead. Links are in the description below. And thank you. Thank you so much for this moment with you. Thank you for your trust. I'm so grateful for it. Now, last week for the short horoscopes, I talked about Mars opposite Pluto. Those are still up on my YouTube channel. You might want to check that out again to understand the energies that we are set to tap into that much more at the very beginning of this week. For this week's short horoscopes, I'm going to look at the Mercury retrograde season and what that means for you in your sign. And that is also an energy that I touched on in the month ahead horoscopes here on my YouTube channel. And of course, we will walk through it together week by week in the superstar space at Nadiya Shah, superstars.com or thefutureismagical.com. So stay tuned for those short horoscopes now. Once again, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for watching. It'll be a great week. Enjoy. Usually 3, sometimes 4 times a year, Mercury enters retrograde season. Now, we love to think about the retrograde in and of itself, which tends to last 2 or 3 weeks, but the shadow periods are so incredibly important because that's when it all starts stirring. And it is the direct shadow that represents Mercury beginning to walk a path that once retrograde is going to walk over for a second time, and then once direct is going to walk over for a third and final time. And over the course of that larger season, we're going to have certain conversations that Mercury makes repeated once again, and normally for a third time as well, as is the case now. This year of 2024, all Mercury retrograde seasons have taken place almost entirely in fire signs, and this one is no exception, with the entirety of this Mercury retrograde season taking place in Sagittarius. So it is on the 7th of November that Mercury enters shadow. This is the start of that pathway I spoke about. We move forward, and it is going to be on November 25th that Mercury will go retrograde and will begin to go backwards over the path that he's been on. And then as we move forward on December 15th, Mercury will return to where Mercury is this week on November 7. Well, December 15, Mercury's back there. And whatever's happening right around the later part of this week might just be seen very differently once we get to that Mercury direct. In fact, it is when the planet is actually changing directions that it is at the height of its power, closer to the Earth than it might otherwise be. Once we get that Mercury direct in December, well, everything looking different now, but also that's really when we're able to make a more accurate assessment of whatever desires or opportunities or people who might have presented themselves to us over the course of the last 6-week period. Mercury will leave shadow on January 2nd of 2025. So along the way, there are key alignments Mercury is making that are going to characterize this time. And probably the biggest has to do with an ongoing dance with Saturn. And this is a conversation of tension. Mercury will square Saturn as we go along. And it is the squares of Saturn that have us facing some difficult truths that have to do with a reality check moment that might not be comfortable, but is necessary in some way. Squares of Saturn ask us what is worth the sacrifice and what isn't worth the sacrifice, and to get really real with ourselves of where it is that we've already given way too much, whether that's of our time or resources or otherwise. Another key conversation is going to involve ongoing oppositions to Jupiter. And that has to do with going way too far, way too overconfident. Over-promising is the key characteristic, seeing things much more idealistically than they actually are, overestimating not only our abilities, but also what other people might be saying to us and promising to us. We might interpret it in a way that is much more favorable than it actually is. And that discrepancy between expectation and the reality of Saturn, well, that just might be part of what has this particular Mercury retrograde season feeling like a roller coaster of sorts. The larger lesson here is pace yourself and be yourself. Don't hold people too closely to whatever promises they might be making at this time. Everyone, including you, is entitled to change your mind. And what seems like a sure bet, what seems like you really have to have it or it really feels right, well, it just might not be what you think it is. And the reality might be less than satisfying. Be mindful of what you are promising others as well, because people are a lot more inclined to hear what they want over the course of this larger transit. Mercury retrograde in the sign of Sagittarius brings that much more boisterous energy, optimistic energy, but it is about overshooting the mark and being brought back to earth. That is going to represent this journey for a lot of us out there. During the first shadow period, pay attention to what's happening. You will in some way return to it during the retrograde, but you won't see it clearly until Mercury goes direct and starts wrapping up this larger journey as we get into the last 2 weeks of December 2024. Now, what this all means for you and your sign depends on your sun, moon, and rising sign. You want to take all three into consideration and then synthesize the information as part of making it unique to you. And of course, if you want to know more about how this energy speaks to you and your sign, check out the monthly horoscopes over on my YouTube channel and the superstar horoscopes over in the superstar space at NadiyaShahSuperstars.com or thefutureismagical.com. Aries, long distance travel, immigration, citizenship, higher learning, and legal matters are covered here. This is about understanding your place in the world, and you might find yourself going back and forth on a legal matter, a higher education matter. So just be mindful if you're looking at starting a process, it's not going to be what you think. But for all that, this can represent a time when you're getting to some core about what it is that you're really seeking from the world and your relationship to it, getting more clear about what you believe about the world and how it supports you in the most loving sense. Taurus, change, truth, transformation, but also financial institutions. Many Taurians are going to find this a time when you might have to go back and forth with a bank or trying to access benefits you might qualify for, even just trying to get a loan. Well, it's not going to be as straightforward as you might think. And if you're in repayment now, well, there might be a sense of needing to go back and forth based on some need to refine the course forward in terms of payments or what you're receiving. Now, for all that, this energy might not be financial at all. It might play out more in terms of your understanding of what is true for you and where it is that you might feel ready to go through a period of transformation where you've already been there. There's this deep sense of rootedness of how different you've become and how you have earned it. Gemini, love partnerships of all kinds. Look, with Mercury retrograde season here, breakups that happen tend to not stay broken up, and miscommunications between you and partners become that much more likely. There is going to be some sense of trying to find a middle ground with key partners in your life, business or personal. If it is that this energy plays out in the context of love and you're open to meeting someone new, well, who you think they are and who they actually are might end up being two very different things. So stay open to possibility and see where it is that the journey wants to take you. Cancer, your daily life, clients, customers, coworkers, and other people you interact with every day, along with your health-related habits, there might be a greater focus spent now on having to go back and forth communicating with these key people I just mentioned. Be mindful that what a client tells you they want, well, they just might change their mind in the middle of it and then go back to what they said at the beginning. So pace yourself and take care of yourself along the journey. Now, that becomes especially true where it comes to your medications that you're taking and other health-related practices. There might be an inclination now to want to start something new, but just make sure you're pacing yourself. The incremental, smallest changes can add up best. However, if you're going all gung-ho or you're not taking certain medications that you've been on for a while, that's when you might have the universe sort of put you into a reality check moment. Pace yourself and be yourself, but know you're moving in a direction of understanding that much more what you need from your work and in terms of how well you take care of you. Leo, romance, flirtation, what the heart wants in every area of life, whether you're returning to a creative project or spending time with a child that maybe you lost touch with there for a while. Also very possible here, someone that you had a fling with, a romance with in the past, well, they just might come back around in some way, especially where you might be idealizing a past situation. Well, this Mercury retrograde is going to get you very honest about who you are, where you are, how you've changed, and whether or not whatever love is for you, are you finding it or not? Your answers are going to be uniquely your own. Certain love is worth working towards, and certain might just not be worth it at all. Virgo, home, the past, your living situation, and your family of origin. The past does come knocking sometimes, very karmically so, and you get to decide whether or not you're going to open that door and answer that call. Chances are it's going to feel more complex than anticipated if that's how this energy comes forward. There might be a desire to go home or be home at this time. It's a good idea not to plan buying, selling, moving, or attracting a new roommate. It just isn't what you expect it to be, but this can be a powerful time to consider those renovations or repairs that are long overdue. Libra, siblings, cousins, neighbors. There might be a whole lot more communication with these people at this time, but misunderstanding with these people is also possible. It could be that you have to get more involved in your local community in some way. For all that, it is you that needs to be especially mindful of how communication can get all mixed up and misunderstandings become that much more likely for your sign than others. Pace yourself and be yourself. Be very careful about signing any contracts over the course of this larger period. If you have to, well, then you have to trust your life. But if you can wait and hold off, you just might see those agreements differently once it is that Mercury goes forward. Scorpio, self-love, self-esteem, money you earn and money that you spend. Now, where it comes to self-love, this is a time of some deeper, more important work that you can benefit from long after this Mercury retrograde season is over. But outside of that, I think a lot of Scorpios are going to experience this in the matters of finances. When we have such strong financial energy, it means that the money you need is there. Sometimes you're engaging important lessons to have it come together. Now, it could be a time when you're asking yourself what's worth doing for money and what isn't. A great way to use this vibration. Not great to make life-changing decisions that alter how it is that you're earning. Of all the signs out there, you will have to be most careful about what you are spending money on now. You think it's one thing, it'll be something else, or you get it and either you change your mind or it isn't what you needed all along. And so pace yourself and be yourself at this time, knowing that what is for you in a very real way, in a practical way, in terms of the possessions that come into your life, well, they'll just find their way to you. Sagittarius, identity, priorities, who you know yourself to be and what matters to you first and most. All of this is up for reconsideration now. Just know that you're not seeing yourself very clearly at this time. And it's more time of garnering experiences that will ultimately help you to get clear about who you are, but also whom it is that you are not. The higher understanding of Mercury retrograde is self-honesty, and where it is you haven't been living in alignment with whom you really are, what's true for you. Well, this is going to be your chance to get to that core so that you live from a space where you know you are in your truth, making everything else in life better. Capricorn, soul, psyche, and spirit. There is so much stirring within. Now, any retrograde represents a time frame that is especially karmic. The energy tends to be turned inward. We're reflecting more deeply on ourselves. And in your case, this idea of reflection goes that much deeper, where you're looking at the messages that you're receiving, the different interpretations possible, the messages you've taken on as truth that have formed some very deep part within. Well, now you get to look at it, you get to heal it through asking yourself some pretty tough questions. But remember, with Mercury retrograde here, really all is not as it seems. If something wants to come, let it. If something wants to go, let it. That karmicness of this time is that much more magnified for you. Aquarius, friendships, group alliances, and friends that you had maybe long ago. Well, this could be surprise, unexpected reunions that take place. You're walking down the street and out of nowhere, there it is that they are, and it's a big moment of surprise. Well, these are the kind of very synchronistic experiences that become quite common when we have Mercury retrograde take place in this part of your sky. For all that, you might be invited back to work in certain group endeavors, professional endeavors as well. What you think it is and what it actually ends up being might be very different. So be very careful before agreeing to something that might be taking a lot of your time going forward from here. But for all that, this can be a powerful time of reimagining and reconsidering past alliances that you held, personal or professional, and tapping into them as part of aligning yourself with bigger opportunities than you knew before. Pisces, career, social standing, life purpose, and your understanding of a higher, more loving vision for your life. The most likely scenario here is that some opportunity you thought was gone might just come back around. In some cases, very much by surprise and delight. But also, what you think it is and what it actually is could end up being very different, especially where it comes to advancement, career-related opportunities, interview, audition situations might start out as one thing, but what the work actually is, well, that could end up being very different as well. Now, if you have to change career paths, well, you want to trust your life, but for all that, if you can hold off a little bit, it'll help you to refine a better pathway forward. Mixed messages with bosses, people of positions of authority. You're thinking they're promising you things, but that really isn't the case. These types of scenarios could transpire now. Thank you again for watching. It'll be a great week. Enjoy.